Hey everyone. So today I have a few clips to go through, and they revolve around the alcohol industry. The first one, and a lot of you emailed this one to me, is about a US brewing school that decided that it needed to move to Canada. I'll explain why in a bit. The second clip out of Nova Scotia, where they're now selling their stockpile of US alcohol, kind of like what New Brunswick did a few months ago. And the last clip, it is a bit of a short one, but it's a report out of the US showing how tariffs are hurting both sides of the border. And then at the end, I want to share an email sent by a US citizen who helped to answer a question I asked Bella of the ranch. So stick around for that. Today's backdrop is another one from Lorelei in Saskatchewan. I'm not really too sure where this was taken, but it's a great shot of the Northern Lights. Thank you again, Lorelei, for helping to showcase Saskatchewan on my channel. All right, let's get started.
The name Siebel might not be recognized by most. It's not a giant of the American brewing industry like Busch, Pabst, or Coors. But those are all names of families that sent members to learn the craft at the Siebel Institute of Technology.
We wouldn't really have the American kind of brewing industry, let alone the craft beer industry, really, without Siebel.
The institute was founded in Chicago way back in 1872 by German immigrant Dr. John Ewald Siebel.
When you were finished spiking.
For more than a century and a half, it's been training brewers from across the U.S. and around the world. It's not just the oldest brewing school, but one of the most prestigious. Well, Chicago is losing what some consider a part of its identity.
Now you might be thinking they decided to move to Canada because their school and business was struggling financially. Kind of like the Rubber Duck Museum I featured a few videos ago, who realized they couldn't stay afloat in Point Roberts, so they moved a few kilometers north to Tsawwassen Mills. Revenue does play a role in this brewing school's decision to move to Canada, but the main reason ties directly to one of Trump's radical policies.
Certainly was a really difficult thing to learn about, and definitely disappointed and saddened.
Now, Siebel was bought by L'Allemand Incorporated, a Canadian yeast company back in 2000. But why move 25 years later? In a press release this week, Siebel's general manager says it's gotten too challenging for international students to attend.
We're tough and we're smart.
The Trump administration is tightening rules for student visas, it says, to end foreign student visa abuse. But it is part of a wider push.
If there's no applications because students don't want to go to the US or they get rejected because of the Trump policies, then there's no courses. No courses mean no revenue. And no revenue means the school is left with empty classrooms. So you can tie this move to Canada as a direct result of the Trump regime.
It's all industries, it's all immigrants, regardless of what the reasoning is for being here.
Siebel's new home will be this building in East End, Montreal. Allemand says it will also set up a new baking academy next door. And while the brewing industry in the U.S. is reeling from the news, it's being welcomed in the Institute's new home.
It's fun to know that this renowned institution wants to set up shop here and was attracted by the beer culture that we already have.
There are other brewery programs in Canada, but landing Siebel, many hope, will be a shot in the arm for the industry in Quebec. Meantime, January of next year is last call in Chicago.
On a business level, this school being based in the US, with government policies that seem to change every other week, leaves them with no other choice but really to move to another country. International students applying to this school won't face the same issues in Canada that they're dealing with in the US. No profiling based on where you're from, no nitpicking through your application, looking for the smallest excuse to kick you out, and not worrying about ICE randomly picking up on the street, even if you're legally allowed to be there. If a course or a program were offered to me in the United States or somewhere like, say, Australia, I would pick Australia. I'm not using Canada as an example since I'm already a citizen, but the point still stands. I would choose the country where I feel safer, not the one where I'd have to constantly look over my shoulder. I suspect that over the next few months, we're going to start hearing about a lot more US-based businesses moving up to Canada or even overseas. They're going to have to if they want to survive. Now moving on, we have a report from Global News about Nova Scotia's decision to start selling off their stockpile of US-made alcohol that's been sitting in the warehouses for most of this year.
Kentucky bourbon, California wine, and other American booze is returning to Nova Scotia liquor stores. For a while anyway, the province has decided to sell off its stockpile of U.S. products. And as CTV's Jonathan McGuinness tells us, there's a plan for the profits.
Empty shelves will soon be filled again with American bottles. With $14 million worth of U.S. alcohol sitting in storage, the Nova Scotia government has decided to sell.
There's no profit to be had for the province of Nova Scotia in selling this at this point in time. This is like, we want to get rid of it.
Now, I really don't have an issue with the provincial government selling off the US-made alcohol. It's been sitting in storage for almost a year now, and it was most likely purchased well before Trump came into the office. I'm fine with them clearing out old stock. What I don't want is for provincial governments to start placing new purchase orders from the US, because I really don't want to support people like this.
This industry is really should be immune from all of that, and it's providing economic harm, no doubt, to American distillers who love the Canadian people and want to export their great brands and share these great distilled spirits products with Canadian people.
This is the same guy who called us boneheaded for taking the liquor off our shelves, and the same guy who thinks his industry should be immune to all the tariffs, all while voting for Donald Trump. Why should your industry be immune when auto, lumber, and every other sector that doesn't get you drunk has to deal with the consequences? For anyone in Nova Scotia thinking about buying the US alcohol that is about to be put back on the shelves, just remember, if you buy it, you're supporting guys like this who literally called us boneheaded.
It's a terrible word, but it's a little bit boneheaded. They've lost $500 million in revenue.
Just because we're not buying US alcohol doesn't mean the alcohol sales have stopped. We're still buying. We're just buying Canadian or we're buying from other countries. So maybe put that US exceptionalism aside, Chris Swanger.
The net profit will be going to Feed Nova Scotia and other community food organizations, a total that could reach $4 million.
Well, I think it makes sense.
Nova Scotia yanked everything from the States in early March. The move came in response to tariffs levied by President Donald Trump. Premier Tim Houston says with talks ongoing between the two countries, selling the American alcohol could be seen as a gesture of goodwill.
The booze issue turns out is a pretty thorny issue at that table. It matters to a lot of Americans and American companies.
Earlier this month, New Brunswick also announced they would be selling off their American alcohol. U.S. booze will be back on the shelves here in Nova Scotia starting on Monday.
I'm positive that the US alcohol officials will try to frame this as some kind of goodwill gesture, but I don't see it that way at all. We're just trying to recoup some of our losses. A gesture of goodwill would be placing new purchase orders. And again, I hope our provincial governments don't cave like Alberta and Saskatchewan did. But you know how this is going to get spun. US liquor officials will come out saying that Canadians finally gave in, or that we couldn't resist having their magnificent alcohol back on our shelves. Come on. You know exactly that's how it's going to be portrayed.
The majority of our U.S. products that we have are mainly whiskey, bourbon, and U.S. wine products.
Getting those items back on shelves could take a bit of time.
As we have product all across the province, some stores have it at their locations, while other stores, due to capacity and storage, had to ship it back to our distribution center. And so they are waiting for their product to come back to them.
Once the existing American booze is gone, there are no plans to bring any more in. That's a decision for the province to make. And Todd Tara McKinnon says the NSLC has about 600,000 bottles of alcohol to be redistributed, and that will take time. She asks that any customers who have specific requests maybe call ahead to see if that item is actually back on the shelves. Todd.
Probably a pretty good idea. We'll see if there's lineups Monday morning. Thanks, John, at the liquor store.
I really hope there aren't any lineups at the liquor store for the US alcohol. You know what would be the biggest fuck you to the United States liquor industry? And might I add, most of them voted for Trump. Leaving it sitting on the shelves and sending a message that, yes, it's available to us, but we're not buying it. Sure, there will be some Canadians who grab it, and that's fine. Those are usually the me, don't tell me what I can or can't buy types. Well, no one is telling you what you can and can't buy. We're just choosing not to buy it because we're standing up for Canada. If I lived in Nova Scotia, I'd take a clear photo of their beloved Kentucky bourbon on the shelf, and I'd send that straight to that smug Chris Swanger with a message that says, it's available to me, but I'm not buying your shit alcohol. That's just me though. I think I've done too many reports on that guy that I can't stand him anymore. Now this next clip doesn't have much to it, but I wanted to point something out once it's finished.
Trade talks between the United States and Canada, Vermont's largest trading partner, are still frozen, with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney saying they'll start again, quote, when it's appropriate. Quebec's Delegate General for the Mid-Atlantic says tariffs have not only hurt tourism to the United States, but also certain industries north of the border, which have resulted in layoffs. He says the primary focus has been meeting with U.S. companies, like the ones in Plattsburgh in New York's North Country, to find out how tariffs have affected them.
Hopefully the tariffs go away. I think that would be ideal. Nobody thinks that the world we used to live in will, ever come back in the exact shape or form that we experienced. So within all of this is to make sure that we continue to do business, as I mentioned, with the U.S. between our companies, but also that we diversify it.
Meanwhile, the North Country Chamber of Commerce is launching a new cross-border campaign on Monday meant to strengthen the cultural ties between the two countries.
We definitely need to diversify. And honestly, I don't think the Canada-US relationship will ever be the same again. At least not in our lifetime. Hey, down. I get that the governments on both sides are trying to mend things in whatever way they can. But at the end of the day, a lot of these deals, partnerships, or agreements, they're probably going to fall on deaf ears. Especially if the goal is to convince Canadians to spend more or start visiting the United States again. But I wanted to show you this quick clip because no matter what our governments do at the political level, Canadians still hold a lot of power, especially with our money. Now, I wanted to end this video by talking about an email I received from a US citizen. In one of my previous videos, I responded to Bella Ranch's question about how we see things in Canada. And in the same video, I asked her a question in return. How can Canadians support the US citizens who didn't vote for Trump while we still continue our boycott on US products and travel? That's a question that's been on my mind for months, and it's a constant tug of war for me, because half of me wants to say screw the US, but half of me wants to be able to support those that didn't vote for Trump. I do have personal connections in the United States, friends, families, and viewers who are genuinely good people and don't deserve what their country is putting them through either. Now, the email that I received from the US viewer really helped me kind of see the bigger picture. Hearing this kind of feedback from south of the border actually did help. Here's what the email said. As an American, my best answer to your question is to support the active resistors. Continue your personal boycott decision without hesitation and increase your advocacy to your government leaders to not capitulate to the current US administration. If the resistors do not win this back, history has a lot of examples of what comes next. It might not be a bad thing for Canada to start preparing for those scenarios, as the efforts will be helpful for most potential outcomes. Thank you for your video. You are doing a great service for all of us. I want to thank the viewer for sending this over to me. I've received a lot of emails from US businesses complaining that our boycott is hurting them, and even a few asking if I can promote their business on my channel, a Canadian channel. Seriously. With the respect to privacy, I've avoided calling out these businesses. But the fact that these US businesses are reaching out to me to drive financial support their way tells me they still don't get it. One of them was even a Trump supporter, and I bit my lip on that one. But this viewer's email, it was simple and direct, and it actually makes sense. All it is just continue the boycott. That's how we can support the US citizens who didn't vote for Trump. So for anyone in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Alberta, and Saskatchewan who still see the US alcohol on the shelves, let those bottles sit there, let them collect dust, and keep sending that message to the US that we're sticking to our values. Alright, that's it for this video. If you found any value from what I shared today, help the channel by hitting the subscribe button. I'll see you all in the next one, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.